girl opened the door, so she screams out this blood-curdling scream. And he forced her in the bathroom and shuts the door. We've come following him behind him. Hands up, whiz the shit. I got the gun to the back of this kid's head, he's got his hands up. And then the kid starts backing up. I yell, don't move. He just turns, starts wrestling with me.
John Lendall never had a fair shot. Growing up in Massachusetts with drug-addicted parents, he dropped out his freshman year of high school and was in and out of juvie before he turned 18. By 19, he was addicted to pills and desperate, and one robbery for drugs turned deadly. Charged with murder, John faced 20 years behind bars. In this interview, he opens up about the night everything went wrong, why he chose to cooperate, and how 12 years in prison changed his life forever. John, welcome to Locked In, man, straight from Rhode Island.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming. And you know, Bean Shooter, the first thing you asked me was, how's that tattoo healing up?
Yeah.
For those that follow me on social media, they know I got branded by Bean Shooter.
Yeah, definitely one of the better success stories, but probably one of the funniest guys. If anyone doesn't follow him, definitely follow him because it's very entertaining.
Yeah, he's so funny. My favorite story is the banana bread story. Did you hear that one when he walked into the Dunkin' twice and he stole it and then he went to pay the second time and they forgot to ring him up, so he got the banana bread?
Yeah, he's got stories for days, that guy, man. I'm glad to see he's doing good. I have a mutual friend that tried to go out to his sober house when he got out. My friend Mike was actually doing a second degree life sentence. He ended up getting a compassionate release. So he knew Mike well, and Mike tried to help him out, but I guess his parole officer wouldn't let him go to the sober house. So he was kind of bummed, but he's doing good now. He's actually living in Florida and stuff. So
yeah, for as much as Bean Shooter likes to joke around, he does do a lot for the community and everything. Him and Johnny Bart too.
Yeah. There's a lot of guys, and that little community too is really tight knit.
Definitely.
Especially guys that are really trying to do good for themselves. There's a lot of support there for sure.
Well, John, I want to shout out what you brought me today. If you want to explain this to the audience, this is such a cool gift.
Yeah, you're welcome. That is Rescue Dog Wheat Whiskey. We produce it. It's just actually a sourced whiskey. We didn't actually distill it. We finish it in our barrels. But one of the most important things my wife and I did after I got out was rescuing a dog. He's an American Bully. His name's Kobe. He's on a label. So a portion of the proceeds from that go back to the shelter that we rescued him from.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's such a neat idea.
Yeah. Good boy. It said pure breed American Bully, too. I couldn't believe somebody would dump him at a shelter.
Yeah.
It was our gain, his loss.
So. Definitely. And we're going to be enjoying our old fashions over here at the studio. You saw we got a whole bar we built and everything, so we'll put this on display over there.
Yeah, the studio's decked out, man. I love it.
Thank you, man.
Get the ping pong table and everything.
Yeah, I suck at ping pong. Matt's a good one. Right. But he likes to play people. So where'd you grow up, John?
So I grew up in Massachusetts. I grew up north of Boston, Peabody, Mass. And I actually bounced back and forth from Peabody to Lynn. My mother and father were never married. They weren't even together when I was born. They were both drug addicts. So I spent most of my time with my grandparents on my mother's side. So my grandparents lived in Peabody, Mass. And then I ended up moving in my teens to, almost my teens to Lynn. And I kind of just bounced back and forth.
I was just in Peabody a few weeks ago seeing Bean Shooter and Johnny. That's when I got the tattoo.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Where at? What studio?
We were at that strip club.
Cabaret? Or
no.
Golden Banana?
Golden Banana, yeah. We
God.
were filming there during the day. We weren't attending as guests. We were just filming. They're friends with the owner.
Yeah.
So we were filming it. We did a whole interview with
Tattoo at a strip club's not the most sanitary place.
No, I didn't get the tattoo. We went to an actual shop.
Oh, okay. Good.
Johnny's cousin.
All right, good.
But yeah, that one was, the interview was done at the Golden Banana.
Okay, all right, cool.
Was it just you growing up, or did you have siblings?
So that's why I ended up moving to Lynn to move in with my aunt. My aunt Karen actually took in foster kids. So when my sister was born when I was 5 years old, and different father, but my parents are still heavily involved in drugs, and they thought it was a little bit too much for my grandparents to handle at the time. So I went to go live with my Aunt Karen in Lynn, where I spent most of my life growing up. And I actually felt it was Lynn's a little bit more of a rougher area, and the foster kids too. I felt like I kind of could relate more to them. Obviously, kids in the neighborhood too. So I felt I kind of just fit in more there. So I ended up going to school there and spending most of my time, growing up there.
Did your grandparents explain what was going on with your parents, why you had to live with your grandparents?
Not until I got a little bit older. I'd say probably not until I was like 10 years old. It was pretty hard to hide too, because even if I went for like on weekends with my father, he was heavily involved in drugs. He was a very good mechanic, but he was also a thief. So my weekends with him would be like comprised of he had a scam where he'd go to one Home Depot, steal a bunch of stuff, and then go to another one in another city and just return it. You could do it without receipts then. And he had scams sometimes where he'd even go into Home Depot, home quarters, or whatever, have a receipt that was a return receipt, and he just take it off with like lighter fluid, go in, pull off whatever expensive, it was like a TV shelf or something like that, and he'd pull it off, bring it right up on a roll, and just return it and just get the cash and go. So it was like I was kind of exposed to that at like a young age, so it was like hard for them to hide it. I kind of knew what was going on, and he'd obviously just go buy drugs. He'd be right in the car and just tell me to look away and be, sniffing coke or doing whatever he was doing. So I kind of knew what was going on. It was hard to miss. Even at a young age, you knew something wrong was happening. And my Aunt Karen was more forthcoming with me than my parents or my grandparents were. So she kind of told me, everything. So I remember she'd bring me to jail to visit my dad, and she was like, "Oh, he's in the Army," and I'd be like, "What's up with all these bars?" And later on, she'd tell me the truth.
Did you have more of a relationship with your dad than you did with your mom?
No, I was actually closer with my mother because I actually lived on her side of the family. I'd spend summers with my grandparents on my father's side as well too. Again, he was a mechanic; they owned a towing company, so I was kind of like a junkyard kid in the summers. But I was definitely closer, on my mother's side to my mother too, because she was still there, but like, in and out. Whereas my father just wasn't in the. He just came in whenever he felt like he was at least trying to do good,
When you're doing these things with your dad, like when he's stealing and doing behavior like that, do you know that it's wrong at the time, or are you kind of learning after him, or do you think it's not normal?
So it's a good question. It's definitely not normal, but it was normal to me, and I knew whatever he was doing was wrong. I knew enough not to tell my mom because I knew my mom wouldn't let me go see him if he kept doing that. So I knew there was something wrong, but I didn't feel like it was like breaking the law. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was never in the back of my mind. He could get arrested and the cops could apprehend me and, put me wherever until whoever came to pick me up. It was just a normalcy, like a way of life. You just picked me up and this is what we were doing. It became kind of, routine. It wasn't every weekend, but maybe, every other weekend or, a couple weekends of the month or whatever.
Did you find yourself comparing yourself to your friends?
A little bit, but that's why, like I told you too, like I kind of got along in Lynn more because those kids related. Those kids had parents that, the dad would sell their Nintendo or their Sega or whatever it was, or they were in and out of their lives and whatever. So I could relate. That's why I kind of fit in more there, especially going to school too. It was at least there was always, 1 in 10 kids that could relate me, or even their parents knew their dad knew my dad. Because my dad, all the drugs are in Lynn. They weren't too much in Peabody until, late 90s, early 2000s when, the opioids hit and things got a lot worse.
What were you like in high school?
So I didn't make it out my freshman year in high school. So I started getting into trouble more in middle school. I think after, the bouncing back and forth, parents in and out. Middle school, I started being exposed to kids, started smoking weed at a young age, like 13, 14 years old. We always, our big thing was kind of playing basketball. If we weren't just hanging out, we were definitely on the basketball courts a lot. And that career kind of ended once I grew to only be about 5'7". So especially in inner city, there were kids dunking in middle school, and they'd actually give them a technical foul for it. So I got really good, but not good enough where it would take me to the next level. But yeah, I was exposed to smoking weed. It was always like a kind of like end of the week thing at first, and kind of became like an everyday thing. And obviously, ambitions go, school becomes less important. Start hanging out with the wrong crowds. There was a lot of gang activity in Lynn at the time, I never really got too affiliated with them, but they were always like in the neighborhood, and I'd see them before school. I'd be smoking weed. Like I said, school just became less and less important to me. I just wanted to just kind of hang out and have fun.
What kind of gangs were in the area?
It was a lot of Spanish gangs, a lot of Cambodian gangs. So it was a lot of Crips. There was a lot of Deuce Boys. There were Bloods too, but Bloods were more in Revere. Revere is like the closer to Boston. Mostly Cambodian, Spanish. But I like I said, the Cambodian culture I always respected, always loved. And I'll never forget. Even before it was my freshman year, I was at the technical school. And I was hanging out. It was a bunch of Cambodian Crips smoking weed before going in. And they're like, "Hey, you want to smoke with us?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I go in, and obviously we're late now. So we go in to go sign in before we go to class because we missed homeroom. And the lady, it was like an older white lady behind the counter. She looks at the three Cambodian kids. She goes, "Oh, you guys got detention." And she looked at me. She goes, "You get to class." I was like the only white kid there. So she was like, obviously, it's not. It was just like programmed in her head, like get the white kid out and punish these other Cambodian kids. So it was definitely middle school kind of threw me for a loop, and then my freshman year in high school, I ended up transferring back to puberty because they found out my aunt stopped taking in foster kids. She took in foster kids for about 10 years, and then started taking in girls because the boys were given it was getting to be too much. She got two girls, and the girls were 10 times worse than the boys. So she was like, "I can't do this anymore." I was getting older. I was obviously getting into my freshman year in high school. So she said, "I'm just gonna, your mom's doing." My mother was doing pretty good at the time. She cleaned up. She was working as a service writer or delivering parts or something like that for a dealership. She was back at my grandmother's house. This is after my grandfather had already passed. But with her working and doing good, she thought it was a good fit for me to go back. So I went back, lived in Peabody, and the school found out that I was living in Peabody. My address wasn't the same address anymore, so they said, "You're not part of this district." They saw I was hanging out with these kids. They were like, "You can't go to school here." So I transferred back to the vocational school in Peabody. It lasted a couple months, and one of my friends got into a fight at it was at the auto body shop. It was a senior. He was a freaking huge kid. He was obviously getting the better of my friend, so I came up and I jumped in, I remember he like pushed me off, and like I fell back and fell. The kid was huge, and then it was in front of the body shop, so there was a bunch of like steel poles and stuff like that out front. So I grabbed one of the poles and hit the kid in the head with it, knocked him unconscious, and we got into my friend's car and left. Didn't really have anywhere to go. We ended up going back because the way that place was set up, you do your vocational stuff at the Voc, which is by the middle school, and the high school you go and do your academics. So the high school is in Peabody High. It's about 2 miles away. So we just go back to the high school, just act like nothing happened, and of course, they find out, and the hall monitors come and pull me out of class, and they go in and bring me to the office. I know what's going on. So I pretty much threw my coat and backpack down, and as he was going down the stairs, I went the other way, jumped off the stairs, and took off. The police ended up catching me like an hour later, and because there's like all woods and stuff out there, there was like nowhere for me to go. And that was the first like DYS sentence where I did like a few months for assault and battery with a dangerous weapon, and then that was like my first exposure to being locked up, so to speak.
What happened to the kid?
He ended up getting staples in his head. He had to get like 6 staples in his head. And he had obviously it was a serious contusion, concussion. Even at the sentencing too, like they had somebody testify saying that it's hard for him to bend down and tie his shoe, stuff like that. So it was a pretty serious injury.
After that happened, did you feel like you were following in your parents' footsteps, not in high school anymore, and going to juvie?
Not really. I mean, like, see, both my parents have been to prison, but I didn't feel like I always wanted to kind of be better than that. So, like, in my own mind, I was like, I was just a kid, but like I was like a man in my own mind. You know what I mean? Like I make my own decisions. I'm not going to be like them. Blah blah blah. And as we all know, it always kind of comes full circle. But as you're an adolescent kid, that didn't even play a factor in my mind.
Before that happened, what were your aspirations? I know you were interested in basketball, but you didn't really see it going as a career. What did you want to be?
Yeah, so I always told my dad I wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to get into the military. and pursue a career there. But once I got into like the wrong crowds, it became more less like a professional career and more a reality of just being in the streets selling drugs, stuff like that, because it was immediate. Obviously, with once school became like, to me, like not important, my aspirations kind of just went into the gutter.
So you're in juvie now at freshman, when you should have been your freshman year at high school.
Yep. It would have been halfway through the semester, so second quarter. It was the summertime. And so it was the first time I ended up doing like, I think it was like 4 months. They send you into Harvard Street in Dorchester. And it's lockup for kids. It's cells. You got flip flops. You got to keep your shoes out in the tier. 30 rooms, all bunked. Some of them triple bunked. It was like my first like exposure. It wasn't my first time in DYS, but it was like my first time getting like locked up.
What was going through your mind while you were there those few months? Were you thinking about your future at all?
Well, the thing is, the kids I was hanging out with, they all had stories about it. They all knew like, oh, you're going to Harvard Street. You're going to MDU, or you're going to wherever. So you're going to Spectrum. Or like, I already had it kind of in my head. And a lot of the kids there, they knew my friends from the street. They already did time there and stuff like that. So it was like, it was just kind of just getting settled in. And I'd see kids coming off the street that I knew as well. So it was like, it became like a normal thing. It wasn't like, oh, I gotta go fight the biggest dude on the block or whatever. It wasn't nothing like that. It was just like, this is how, I've already heard it, right? I've already heard people talking about it. So this is just how things are.
How'd your parents react?
Oh, they're disappointed for sure. My dad, not so much. He kind of saw it coming too. But my mother, and obviously my grandparents, my Aunt Karen too, they always wanted more for me, and they'd always give me the lectures while I was there. So it was always like, even at a young age, they'd start telling me the only path this leads to is either here forever or in jail. Here forever or you're dead. So it was, it was always disheartening. But then once I get back out, it was like, you just resort to the same thing. You see the same people, you start hanging out with the same crowd. It just became a norm.
Before you got out, did you see a world where you were going to be on the straight and narrow, everything was going to be good, you were never going back to a position like that ever again?
Yeah, so like it's always like a reset, right? Or it's always like, I'm not going to smoke cigarettes anymore. I'm not going to be smoking so much weed. I'm not going to be, I'm just kind of just mind my own business and whatever. But once you get back into the thick of things and you see those everyday people, the friends, and they start, they say, hey, let's go, we're going, somebody's buying us beer tonight, I got some weed, whatever, and they're already smoking cigarettes again, and you just get back into the same cycle. Instead of, I wasn't mature enough to know that like I had to be removed from that whole atmosphere.
Why didn't you go back to school when you got out?
So the school, Peabody wouldn't take me back. I was expelled, especially if there's a weapon involved or anything like that. The only other choice at the time would be some kind of private school or something like that, which they can be expensive. We couldn't afford it. So my next step was go to work. And I had jobs as a teenager too. Like one of my first jobs was working with my dad. He was a mechanic. So I'd leave school and just walk to the mechanic shop and work for $5 an hour. I didn't like working with my dad because he's not the best, teacher, or he gets frustrated really quick. So I started working at the body shop next door. So I did that, for about 2 years. And so when I got out at DYS, it was no question. Like I had to go back to work. My uncle was doing drain cleaning at the time. So it was like the only opening. They're always hiring because it's like really shitty work. But I got the job, started working, and I'm sorry, the drain clean didn't come till a second DYS stint I did. The first time I got out, I was still kind of just lost. I didn't go back to work, and I was kind of just like in no man's land, kind of just doing my own thing. And I actually ended up getting caught with a rifle a few months after I got out, and I was almost 17 at the time. They almost picked it up as like an adult case. So then it became more real. I got out from that. That was about an 8-month DYS stint. I was, a little over 17, and that's when I got the job drain cleaning.
Why a rifle?
So that's another funny story. I was at a party. It was a summertime. I was at a party at a friend's house in the Highlands, and I needed a ride home because at this time I was back living with my grandmother. The party was in Lynn, so this girl was going to give me a ride. She gives me a ride, and she's been to the house before, so she knows it's like this place. It's like, off the highway, you still got miles to go. You're going through the woods, like it's a ways. She goes, I'm going to get lost. And she's been drinking. She goes, I got to drop you off right in. This is like the exit on the highway. I was like, oh, this is still like 3 miles. Like, I to walk. She goes, I don't care. I get out. So I like, I spilt my orange soda all over and fucking got out. And so now I'm on the highway, and then there's this main street that goes down to my grandmother's house. It's a probably about a 2-mile street. And then there's like another mile to get to my grandmother's house. So I made it, in my own mind, I was like, oh, there's an opportunity in every crisis. So I'll just break into every car on the way in, because that was part of the hustle when I was a kid, was stealing stereos and stuff like that. This is the early 2000s when like jail audios and the Alpine faceplates and TVs and the headrests and everything were kind of becoming more and more frequent. So I was like, I'll just break in every car on the way in and I'll make some money on the walk. Screw it. So there was like a maintenance van in one of like the cul-de-sacs off the highway. So I broke into that van. The reason why is because maybe there's like a tool bag in there or something. My dad can get some tools to stop breaking into these cars, into which I did. There was a screwdriver, flashlight, everything I needed. So I hit about 3 cars, and I started stashing all the stereo and everything, the speakers and the faceplates and everything, just in the woods, and I'll just come back and get it later because I did have a car. And then I was like, this is enough. So I'm just gonna go home. There was one more house by a dumpster, probably about 3/4 of a mile from my grandmother's house, and just something told me like, just hit one more. So I hit one more. I get into the car. The center console is a big box of bullets. So I was like, I gotta go in the trunk. I go in the trunk, and there was an old 30-06 rifle with a scope on it, bolt action. And so I grabbed that, threw it by the dumpster. It was like a doctor's office right there. Threw it behind the dumpster. Went and got my car and went and picked up everything on the way back. And then my room looked like freaking Radio Shack at the time. And then obviously my mother wasn't too happy with that. But I was like, just leave it. It'll be gone soon. But I had this rifle stashed in the ceiling in my bedroom. And obviously, you're a kid, you tell your friends, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I had some friends that went out, got into a fight with a kid and beat him with like within a half inch of his life right in front of his mother. So they all got picked up. One of the kids was a gang affiliation. So that they have the gang units always question them. They're always looking for guns. So that kid threw my name out there. Next thing I know, it was task force, gang unit, detectives and everything raiding my grandmother's house in Peabody, and they found this bolt action 30-06 right before the DC sniper thing happened. And so yeah, they were looking to make an example out of it. Luckily, they just allowed me to pretty much age out. I got out right before my 18th birthday, and that's when I started doing drains and stuff like that. And I did good. It took me longer to kind of fall back into things after that.
Were you going to do anything malicious with the gun, or it was just,
Oh, it was cool to have. I mean, we shot it. It's a rifle. It's like, you can't fucking rob a store. You're not going to saw it off because it's not going to work properly. And it was just, I don't know. It was a gun. So, I was just going to sell it. And then, but one of my friends talked me out of it because it was like, dude, you sell that thing and if someone catches a body with it, like, it's coming back to you. So I was gonna sit on it for a while and try to find, maybe a fucking hunter or something like that would buy it. But that didn't last too long. I think it was like 2 months after I had it, I ended up getting caught with it.
So tell us about what happens after you get out from that stint when you're 18.
Yeah, so that was kind of like a turning point for me where I was like, I got to get my shit together. I'm 18 years old now, no high school education. I ended up getting my GED. I actually ended up getting my GED before I was actually eligible to graduate high school. And I just needed to, just get on the straight and narrow. I'm kind of removed from everything. I was, living at my grandmother's house. My Uncle Mark wanted to help me out. He like I said, I grew up with my grandparents. He still lived in the house when I was a kid. So he's only 10 years older than me. He was like a brother. He was the one that got me the drinking job. So I was just, I was just working, saving money, and I ended up buying a car. Ended up, buying a motorcycle, and I got my own apartment. And getting my own apartment in the Highlands in Lynn was just definitely a bad move because it kind of put me smack dab in the middle to what I was doing before. And then, and I had disposable income because, I was at the time, this was 2003, I was making 15, 16 bucks an hour doing drains, and it's a lot of hours too. So I had like kind of more money than I knew what to do with, like legally. So then you get to get money piled up, you want to make more. So I started, selling weed again. Oxycontin at the time was huge, and Vicodin and perks, the perk 30s and stuff like that. So I picked a few of those packs up from friends, started selling those. It kind of, was very, very lucrative. And then obviously you get curious. You got your friends popping Vikes and like, hey, pop a couple Vikes with us, whatever. And it becomes a weekend thing, then it becomes an everyday thing, and kind of just went kind of head on into like full addiction. First starting with Vicodins. Wasn't too big on smoking weed because it made me paranoid, even though I smoked weed all the way up to, 13 to, 18. And then next thing you know, the Vicodins, like, once you get into that thrall of addiction, you're like, shit, I'm taking fucking 30 Vikes a day. And like the Oxycontin was a lot more powerful. You can get away with, getting the same feeling with doing a lot less and a lot easier in your stomach. So as I was, picking up packs of those, picking up like 50, 60 at a time, and then, reselling them. But then the habit would get more and more too. So need more. Next thing I know, I was in full scale just addiction with it while working for this drain cleaning company too.
Why did you feel the urge to use?
It was just there. It was like everyone was doing it. Everyone, like, you going out to a party with the girls are doing it. Like it was like the norm, and everybody started the same way. Everyone was always like Vicodins, perks, and then Oxycontin, and then it went obviously to heroin, and then even I hear stories in the streets now. It's like heroin's not even on the streets; it's all fentanyl. But it all stemmed from that. It was like all the Oxycontins kind of just infiltrated, cities and suburbs all over the country.
Do you think it interested you a little bit because of your parents?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I used to get, even at that point when I had my own apartment. My dad was like proud of me. But when I didn't hide anything from him. I'd hide stuff from my mother. My mother's, she flushed 10 pounds of weed down the toilet one time, which was a big hit. But my dad, I didn't have to hide anything from him. He was still in the full thralls of addiction too. So I'd hang out with my dad, hit him off. We get high together. And again, it was like one of those things where it was just normal.
Do you think he wanted more for you at that point in your life?
He definitely did, but I think he felt like it was kind of a lost cause, and he kind of felt like it was inevitable. And he felt some guilt towards, exposing me to all that stuff at a young age. It just became normal.
Do you blame your parents for your addiction?
No, not at all. Because I definitely had the opportunity and the opportunities to do better. I knew it was wrong. I knew, I could obviously see where it would lead to, but I kind of, in some sadistic way, I kind of wanted it to. Like I wanted that lifestyle. Like I said, I fit in more. I could relate to it more.
How long does this go on for?
So this only, again, I worked for that drain cleaning company for about, I'd say about 18 months. So, I was 18 years old, own apartment, motorcycle, all that, but the addiction was starting to catch up too. So I was dating this girl at the time, and she introduced me to her girlfriend's boyfriend, who was an Oxycontin dealer at the time, and so she said he's got more than what you need. He can always keep you supplied, whatever. So we made that connection, and we started selling. I started selling, not for him. I'd pick up from him and whoever else I could, because at the time, it was when they started switching from regular time release Oxycontin to they weren't sniffable. Like if you broke the time release on it, it would just gel up. So there was a big demand on the street. I get connected with him, kind of undercut the prices from, $80 a pill to $65 a pill, picking up to 100, 200 at a time. And it gets more and more and more, to the point where at the time, there were a network of kids that were going down south and pretty much robbing pharmacies and couriers and even salesmen that just had pills in their trunk, robbing them and then bringing it all up north and selling it. Those guys ended up getting busted, and once that happened, everything kind of dried up on the street. So I was selling drugs with this kid, and everything dries up, and everyone's kind of just scrambling, trying to find places to buy. And through one of his mutual friends, they found these kids in Revere that were selling out of a hotel. And he said he's going to set up a deal with them. He wanted just me to be there, for it. I wouldn't be in the room, but I'd be, in one of the rooms, down the hall. So we did that. He sets up the deal, and then the deal fell through. I guess they were telling him one price, but that price was for if he bought all of them. He wasn't going to buy all of them, so they kind of, boosted the price on him. He wasn't happy about it. So he came back and pretty much said, he's like, I'm just going to rob these kids. So that was it.
And what happens?
So at first, I didn't want any part of it. Like, I wasn't a stick-up kid. I never did any kind of armed robberies. And I broke into houses and stuff like that, broke into cars, blah, 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 and sold drugs. But I was 19. These were all older kids too. And so I was like, did you even see? I asked him, did you even see any of what they had? You see where the stash was? Do you know if they have money? He was like, oh no. He's like, yeah, my friend told me you got at least 10 grand cash. He's like, I know the pills are in there. So at this point too, we're all kind of just like getting strung out. So it's like, it was one of those things where like, all right, fuck it, let's do it. And then at the time, he had a gun. I didn't have a gun. I had to get a gun from a friend. And then I recruited my cousin, who was like a brother to me. He was my Aunt Karen's son. And I told him, I was like, we got to have at least 3 people going in, because there's definitely going to be at least 4 kids in there that we know of. And there was a girl there too. And so I get him, ended up getting a gun, no bullets. So I was like, we can't do this. I was like, they got a gun, and they go off, we're fucked. And then he goes, no. He's like, they don't have a gun. I didn't see anything. I know for a fact there's none of them have guns. So, and then I was like, fuck it, we'll do it. He gets some methadone to kind of take the ouch out from us. This is my co-defendant now. We set it up so we had a kid going to buy drugs off him. We knew who he was. He was going to give us the heads up as he was going in the door. We were a few doors down, so we could just see through the peephole when they're going in, and we just forced ourselves in right after him. So at this point, my co-defendant's loading. He only had it was only a 22, but he had long rifle bullets and regular bullets. So he only had 4 regular bullets, and there was only one left, and it was a long rifle bullet. And I was like, dude, you can't put that in that gun. It's not gonna shoot. He was like, no. He's like, I've shot him off before. So that's the first bullet, like at the top of the clip. So I was like, dude, that's not gonna shoot. I was like, yeah. I was like, just take the 4 bullets. Like, 4 is better than this thing fucking jamming. And he was like, no. He's like, I shot him off. Trust me. So he does that. Make the call. Kids going in. We're masked up. So there's 3 of us. Only one functioning gun. So he's the first one out. As he sees his kid, the door open to get let in, he forces himself in. The girl opened the door, so she screams out this blood-curdling scream, and he forced her in the bathroom and shuts the door. And we've come following him behind him, hands up, whiz the shit. And again, we weren't stick-up kids, so I wasn't like yelling like the fucking DEA or anything like that. We probably didn't sound too convincing. So I got the gun to the back of this kid's head. He's got his hands up. My co-defendant's behind me, gun out, and then my cousin Mike went around to the bed where they did have some money laid out on the bed, and he starts grabbing that. And then the kid I had the gun to the back of his head to starts backing up. And then I I yell, "Don't move," and then he just turns and starts wrestling with me. So we're pretty much grappling now. I end up throwing him in the corner where there was like a lamp, and the lamp falls and breaks. And then I could hear my cousin saying, "Yo, don't shoot," because my co-defendant was pulling the trigger to the gun, and it wasn't shooting, just like I said. So he racks the gun, and I look at my cousin. I was like, "You got the money?" He's like, "Yeah." And the kid finally, like after we're wrestling, he kind of just like lays down on the ground. His friends are yelling at him like, "Yo, don't fucking fight these dudes! Like they got guns. What's wrong with you?" And I was like, "You got the?" And my cousin's just panicking. He's like, "Yeah." He's like, I got it. Let's go." So I run out the door. And it was a handkerchief, falls off. And then I'm like 2 doors down, and I heard a pop. And then I guess that kid got back up and like stood up and like made eye contact with my co-defendant. He just let off on him. And the bullet fired and it hit him in the abdomen. And then we all ran out. Didn't even go back to our room. Went right to the staircase out had a Durango at the time, which wasn't too smart, and took off. And then after we left, we realized that the room had our fingerprints in it, had drugs that we had. He left, like, co-defendant left his ID in there. It was bought under a fake name. I'm talking about our room, not the room where the crime happened. Yeah. So we had to find somebody to go back and retrieve all the stuff. We drive around for hours. We finally find somebody, and we send this kid in to go give him the room number. And by this time, the place is crawling with cops. So the kid goes in, never comes back out. And then we kind of just knew, like, it's kind of a matter of time before they come knocking.
What happened to your co-defendant that got shot in the abdomen?
Oh, he didn't get shot. He shot.
Oh, he's the one that.
Yeah,
okay, because you said he got back up and then.
The kid that I was wrestling with got back up. And as soon as he made eye contact with my co-defendant.
Your co-defendant shot him.
He shot him.
Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep.
So what was that conversation in the car when he came back outside and you guys know a gunshot went off?
Yeah.
Are you guys, is there contention or?
Yeah, so I was like, what the fuck happened? He was like, "Oh, I just shot at him. I didn't shoot him." And then my cousin was like, "Dude," he's like, "You definitely shot him." That kid dropped. But even when we send the kid back in to get the stuff from our room, we still didn't know there was anybody died. So it wasn't until the next day, I think I had the day off, I had lent my friend who lived in Malden a Breitling watch. He was taking a girl out. I had this nice Breitling watch. And he was like, "Oh, can I borrow that watch? I'm going on a date." I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." So I give him that. And I was like, and he was like, "Hey, you hear this?" When I was giving him the watch back, he was like, "You hear this shit happened at the hotel the other night?" Because he lived in Malden, Revere's right next door. And I was like, yeah, I heard about it. And he was like, "Yeah, it's pretty crazy." Because he was involved with selling drugs too. So anybody, they knew it was broadcast as like attempted robbery, blah, blah, blah. I was like, "Yeah, it was me." And he was like, "What the fuck?" And he was like, the kid died, right?" And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Yeah, the kid that got shot, he's dead." I was like, "What the fuck?" And then the next day, they ended up, the cops ended up apprehending my co-defendant. And then the next two of us got arrested, days later, like right one right after another.
How much did you guys end up running away with, money-wise?
Oh, it was nothing. It was like $2,800, no drugs. So and again too, like, we weren't stick-up kids, and none of us did like our due diligence on what exactly was there, where things were. Like, you're doing that stuff, you gotta be prepared for it, because things can just go wrong at the drop of a hat.
Why do you think you went against your own morals and values? You said you're not a stick-up kid. Why do it to begin with then?
It's just how I was strung out. Once you're trying to, you don't think the same, especially once that feeling hits of you're just on empty and you're not getting that high anymore. Like, those morals and shit kind of fucking go out the door. It's just about getting the next score so you can sustain and maybe make some money.
Did you think about fleeing at all?
We did, yeah. But I was a kid. I was 19 years old. Like, where the fuck was I gonna go? It got to the point, especially, I just went back to work like it was another day. We didn't have money. we couldn't go anywhere. I just went back to work, and then next thing you know, I'm on the road, and my mother's calling me, and she's like, John, I got about, a dozen state troopers here and 3 detectives, 1 homicide detective. So she's like, you gotta talk to them. And I was like, yeah, put them on the phone. And then, and they're like, oh, we just want to talk to you. We don't even know if we have the right guy or whatever. Just come meet us at the station. And then, and I was like, yeah, sure. And I didn't show up. And then I was in my van. It was a fucking decaled fucking drain van. It was kind of hard to miss. So they ended up getting me. And they brought me in for questioning. Actually got caught in Peabody. Bring me to the Peabody police station. And these 2 detectives were questioning me, asking me, where were you on, I think it was a Wednesday night. Oh, no, it was a Friday night. And I was like, I worked that day and, hung out with some friends, whatever. They're like, you didn't go to Revere at all? I was like, I might have went and saw, went to a hotel room to see a friend, whatever, but I didn't stay and whatever. So they're like, so you know who we're talking about, all this. I was like, yeah. And they're like, so is that who you went to meet? I was like, yeah, but I didn't stay, whatever. And then I was like, I was like, I know what's going on. So I was like, you guys questioning me on the incident that happened? He goes, yeah. And I was like, I want a lawyer. I was like, I can't, talk about this anymore. So they stopped questioning, and they booked me in Peabody on murder charges. Again, a 19-year-old kid getting booked on murder charges was kind of like a sobering event. And I found out later on that was actually a kind of a tactic to get me to turn. Like the booking, there was never a booking. It wasn't like I was never arrested there formally, but they made it so it was like a scare tactic. So they bring me to, and again, all the stuff I told them then was all just recorded. There was no tapes, there was no camera, there was no, I was just in a room and they were just writing shit down. So they bring me to Revere police station, and then they bring me back up, and they're questioning me again, which is they're not supposed to do. This goes on for hours and hours and hours. It was probably, so between Peabody and Revere, I was interrogated for like a little over 9.5 hours. No bathroom, no nothing. And then, and right as I was like, listen, I was like, you guys gotta, bring me back to the cell. I was like, I gotta use the bathroom. Let me use the bathroom up here. I was like, just book me in and put me in. So now they have to formally book me in Revere police station. So they do the fingerprinting, and then my uncles Mark and Jimmy actually went to the police station because they heard I got arrested. My uncle Mark was the guy I worked with, so obviously the boss of the company wasn't too happy. And they were just concerned. They were like, "Hey, what's going on?" When they're like, "Can we see him?" And they're like, "No, he just got arrested." Blah blah blah. It's murder 1. So then one of the officers come back up, and he's like, "Your uncle Mark and Jimmy are here, and they're telling you to make the right decision and tell them what happened. Tell us what happened." So I was like, which I found out later on too was also a tactic. But my uncles never said that. They just wanted to know if they could see me. So right there, I turned turncoat, and I let them know everything that happened, and then it was a confession. At the time, I thought it was the worst thing I ever did, but going back now, it was probably the best thing I did. Just because I know if I didn't, if I did somehow beat the case or anything like that, I was going right back to where I was.
I mean, also, there's several other co-defendants. Mm-hmm. So what are the chances in your mind that they're not doing the same thing?
Yeah. And obviously that's telling that to you too. And my cousin Mike he just got apprehended earlier that day. So we're all pretty much caught. There was a 4th co-defendant that got charged as an accessory because he just helped. He was kind of the one setting it up. And he had already turned. As soon as they grabbed him, he kind of told them everything. That's how they got my first co-defendant, to know where he was and stuff like that. The gun was gone. All the guns were gone. So we didn't have to worry about that. But then going forward, for me, it was like, it was going to be hard to go to trial with the confession. I toyed with recanting and stuff like that, but they say it's still, even if you recant, it's still it's still admissible. It's not like, then we went to go for, illegal interrogation, but they never logged the puberty interrogation. It was never like a thing. So the timeline was different. So the timeline, I guess it's over 8 hours. I think it's Commonwealth versus Rosario is one of the cases, whereas they say, after 8 hours interrogation, you gotta have bathroom breaks, you gotta have food, stuff like that. If they don't adhere to that, then any confession after is inadmissible. But they never logged the puberty interrogation, so it was just shy of it was like 7 hours and 40-something minutes. So we couldn't go that route either.
What would have happened if you didn't confess?
I think it was a good chance we could have beat the case. My co-defendant ended up not getting convicted of murder. He got just convicted of home invasion. Even though it was a hotel room, it's still a threshold where a dwelling is, so it's still considered armed home invasion.
And he went to trial?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and he didn't get murder?
Nope.
But he wasn't the one that pulled the trigger?
He was the one that pulled the trigger.
And he only got a home invasion?
Yeah. Well, he beat the murder, so the jury found him, because there was 3 of us in there, so logically you think, anybody with a that's rational would be like, these guys could be saying whatever the hell they want. We really, what happened was when the kid got shot, the shell casing that he racked out, that popped out, that was the one jamming the gun, they found it in the floor. Like, they didn't call an ambulance right away. They were selling drugs. They didn't want cops there. So they threw a shell case and they tried to flush it down the toilet, but it's dead weight. It's not going to flush. So the cops found evidence in the toilet. So these kids were obviously trying to cover up evidence. We were obviously robbing them. So there was no credibility in the case from anybody.
Yeah, because it's not like they were innocent party in there. They were doing illegal activity too.
Exactly. Yep.
So how much time does he end up getting after trial for home invasion?
He ended up doing a little under 15 years.
And what did you get for your plea deal?
I got charged with 18 to 20. And my co-defendant got 12 to 14, my cousin Mike. And I think I sent you the original sentence admit that I got. So it was 18 to 20 years. And then for when they found out about there was a few police officers involved in the case, Revere police officers that actually, booked me and made the arrest. They were in a parking lot one night and got involved with some kind of altercation where, shots rang out. Like, they were drinking beer in like a parking lot, like off duty, and still had guns on them. And I guess one of the gangbangers in the neighborhood recognized one of the cops and just started letting off on him, and the cops fired back. I can't remember if anybody ever got hit, whatever, but they were involved in it, and it was like a shady thing at the time. It was like, why are these cops just drinking in a parking lot and getting into altercations with the neighborhood? So that cop was involved. So we had the previous motion for the illegal interrogations. There was obviously some kind of nefarious stuff going on. So my lawyer was going to, file pretty much saying that the plea wasn't legitimate because all this stuff was happening. These cops weren't, the arresting officers weren't like, they weren't doing the right thing, so to speak. So at that point, they came back and said, we'll reduce it down to 12 to 14, and pretty much everyone gets the same time. And luckily it went through. And kind of what played in my favor, too, was I was the only one at sentencing that took the stand and then offered my condolences to the victim's mom. The kid was only 22 years old. And I pretty much took the stand and said, sorry's not bringing him back. Sorry's definitely not enough, but I'm definitely, less of a man due to the fact that my actions played a direct role into you losing your son. My family was there. She was there. She actually hugged my grandmother and my aunt. Even like the judge was crying. Forgiveness is like a really powerful thing. But obviously, me kind of laying all my cards on the table, not trying to get away with anything, and then offering my not just my condolences, but saying it's my actions that directly led to this, and I got to live with that now. So that was a big thing, and obviously it helped later on. But it was, even if I didn't get the reduction, I was still the reduction wasn't even talked about at the time where I offered my condolences to her.
Did you know how much time you were going to have to serve out of that going into it?
Oh yeah, well, 18 to 20 years. I mean, in Massachusetts, you can, once you're eligible for good time, you can get, pretty much every month you can get to 10 to 12 days good time. They cap it at that. So it's not much, but it takes time to get into that position too. You got that length of a sentence, you go right to maximum security. If you go to maximum security, it's like it's a portal. I mean, it's hard to get out of that vortex.
What was your experience like there when you first got there?
So, I mean, I'd already known people. I mean, we were already waiting trial for 3 years. So, especially in Massachusetts, it's all segregated to where you're from. Like, you got the Lynn table, you got the Boston table, you got the South Boston table, you got Charlestown table, so it wasn't, we knew people, so it wasn't like I knew it wasn't going to be like a thing where it's like you have to prove yourself or whatever. As long as you stay out of the drugs and the gangs, you'll be all right. But when I first went up, I wasn't clean yet. And then, so it was definitely something you got to adjust to, but it was a lot better than doing county time. It was a lot easier. It's set up for doing time, not, the county jail systems were ridiculous.
Were there a lot of young people in this maximum security prison, or were you guys the youngest?
There were still a few young kids. I mean, you got to think that everybody goes there. So there was kids that have been there for, they came in as kids, but they're older now, and they know it's like they kind of show you the ropes on, doing like real time. So there's definitely a little bit of mentorship there. But again, if you're involved with drugs, you're gonna get in trouble. Like you're gonna get in some kind of altercation, or you're gonna have some kind of tension with the cops all the time. So I wasn't too heavily, especially with the maximum security. There wasn't as many drugs as there were in medium security. So it was easy to kind of get away from that.
Were you scared?
Oh, of course, yeah. Especially going to maximum security prison. It's like, and then it was Sousa Baranowski Correctional Center and Walpole. Those were the two, big ones at the time. And you hear stories growing up of, horror shows of those places. So you already have it fixed in your head, what the fuck's going to happen. And then, seeing it firsthand and being a part of it and trying to get acclimated to it is something you can't prepare for. You have to just do it.
Once you got to prison, were you thinking a lot about going to trial? Like if you had gone to trial? Yeah.
But obviously getting the confession thrown out was the main thing. We could fight it as much as you want, but and especially we weren't severed until we took the plea. So we'd all go to trial together, and having that confession on there, it makes it look bad for everybody. So it wasn't like it would have been hard. It would have been really hard to beat and go to trial and try to discredit what the confession was.
What was the charge you actually pled to?
It was manslaughter. That manslaughter, then armed assault in a dwelling, and mass armed robbery.
Did you feel bad that you got your cousin roped up in that?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I didn't hold a gun to his head. I mean, he was involved with the same stuff I was. But still, yeah, I still carry the guilt. And now he ended up doing a little more time because he got in trouble. He never got clean. He got thrown right into that. He was all involved with the drugs, through the whole bid. It was a rough bid for him. He did some DDU time. And DDU is disciplinary detention unit. That's where they send you. It's like the hole within the hole. Like you get assault charges, you hit a cop, stab somebody, whatever. They send you to DDU. You don't just go to segregation. So he did some DDU time, and even to this day, it's still a struggle. I try to help him out as much as possible. He's in a sober house right now, trying to stay clean. And from what I hear, he's doing pretty good.
How long did it take for you to get clean once you went to prison?
Once I went to maximum security prison, I was involved with the race riot that was because of drugs. It wasn't my direct play into it, but after that, and I was in the hole. Luckily, I mean, at the time I had I still had like a bag of dope that I snuck in there with me, and I did the last bag, and I definitely did way too much. Got nauseous, threw up everywhere, threw up all over the toilet, and then I passed out. Like I nodded off on the toilet, and I woke up. I don't know, maybe like 45 minutes, an hour later, and it was like just the crust was like stuck to my face, and I was, I look in the stupid prison mirror, it's like a piece of metal, and you just see. I saw my face, and I was like, I can't fucking do this. And then from that point on, I never touched anything.
Tell us about the race riot.
So it was a couple Latin Kings from Worcester that were bringing stuff in, and another Worcester guy got a bag from him, and he said he was like, this is bullshit. The bag smells like shit. Obviously, it was in somebody's ass, but he was sniffing it and wasn't getting high. And of course, it's like every junkie story. Like, of course, the Puerto Rican dude's like, yeah, dude. He's like, it's dope, whatever. Who's to say how many times they stomped on it, whatever. So they were going back and forth for days, and the guy that got the bag of dope was like, dude, I'm not paying you. But I think it was only like a finger of dope or something like that. He was like, I'll tell you what. He's like, I'm not giving you a green dot, which is like, sending money out. He was like, but I'll sell it and I'll get canteen. I'll give you the canteen for it. So the Puerto Rican was like, okay, I'll do that. And days go by, and obviously he's not giving them it. And so there's this tension there, and all of a sudden they're on a handball court. And this is building up for like 2 weeks. So it's, they're talking to their friends, the white guys are talking to their friends, and it just built up. So on the handball court, out of nowhere, the Spanish kid ended up just cracking them, and then all hell broke loose. And I was actually in the weight room at the time, and Shirley Max, at that point, the weight room was separate from the gym. But then once we saw what was happening in the gym, it was go time for us too. I was actually fortunate because we were way outnumbered in the weight room, but they only allow a certain amount of people in there. And I was actually fortunate enough where some of the Latin Kings and the Bloods were fighting as well. So the Bloods actually got involved and started, fighting some of the Puerto Rican kids that were in the weight room as well. So I ended up a couple of nicks and scratches, but it was like a pig pile pretty much. And one dude, my friend Mike, ended up cracking his head on one of the weight plates. And he busted his head open. He ended up having to get staples in his head too. But then you're stuck in seg. Once there's like you're part of like some kind of riot, or you're stuck in the hole. You're like, what am I getting? And they're like, get comfortable because it's an investigation. You could be getting shipped out. You could be whatever. Luckily, through their due diligence, obviously they go through camera footage and all that, and I ended up doing I think 45 days in the hole, and then I ended up going over to the other side of the prison.
Did time seem to go by fast in prison when you first got there, or slow?
It went by slow, especially when you got that much time, and you're not acclimated. I'd say that the time didn't really start going faster until I got into medium security.
And how many years into your sentence was that?
So I did, it was almost half. So I did 6 years at Shirley Max. I ended up doing about a little over 6 a little under 6 at medium.
When you have a sentence that's that long, are you counting down on day one, or is it not even a thought?
No. I mean, it's funny because I had people like, oh, you want me to send you a calendar? I was like, I don't fucking want none of that stuff. Don't even get me a fucking watch.
Yeah, I feel like that. I mean, that's a lot of years to count down.
It is, yeah. But I will say, one of the best things, once I sobered up, I started getting involved with a lot of the programs there, even the programs that didn't offer any good time or anything like that. Changed my life. And I had so much stuff to do. I was involved with so many things, even just going to the church just to get off the fucking block. It helped a lot. And then other people see it too. Obviously we got to, you give a confession, you're labeled as a rat pretty much. And so going through that in those environments is, it sucks because you're like the bottom of the barrel. And at the point where I did sober up, I wasn't trying to hide it or anything like that, but people knew I was like, I was just minding my own business. I exercised, I did all the programs, did whatever, other than like one, skirmish thing I had with the guy I knew from the street. The people just pretty much just left me alone.
Yeah, so people didn't give you a hard time because you confessed and technically on paper ratted?
Yeah, in the beginning. But again, once they saw, it was like, to what point after that? It was like I said, I got into one fight a kid I knew from the street because he was like, oh, you're a fucking rat, whatever. And I was like, I got to fight you now. Like this, I can't just fucking shrug that off because I'm just not going to be a bitch or a punk. So we ended up fighting in the stairwell. And then obviously I lost some friends over too, like friends like I made there that weren't affiliated with me on the street at all. They kind of knew what was going on too. And I said to them too, it's no hard feelings. It's politics at this point. So it is what it is.
So what happens when someone calls you a rat and then fights you but loses the fight?
I mean, they still got the upper hand. You're still a rat. They just lost a fight. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like losing to a girl. You know what I mean? Like, if you win on a girl, like, okay, you just beat up a girl. But if you lose, you lost to a fucking girl. It's still like, he's still seen as like a solid guy. Whatever. I'm sure people busted his balls and stuff too. But
what do you think about the whole ratting thing? Just the code, and are you supposed to be loyal to people that put you in a situation like that?
So I do see that, right? So in my situation too, it wasn't my childhood friend. Like, it was somebody I was selling drugs with. So I came to a standpoint where I had a lot of time to sit on this. Whereas like the people that came into my life, like why did I meet them? When did I meet them, and why did I meet them? So like, this guy I met through selling drugs was already a bad thing, and we weren't like childhood friends. And then because of the stuff that we were doing, it led to a 22-year-old kid getting shot and killed. And for me, I always consider myself a man, blah blah blah. But I was a 19-year-old kid, and even then too, like it became less of an issue for me because I was still just a kid. Like, people see, like, he's a kid. It's a body. It's not like, it wasn't like we were breaking in a house and I was like, oh, he's the one that fucking did it. It was like I was looking at a fucking life sentence without parole. So, at that age, I mean, that's it. That's the rest of your fucking life.
I bet you most people would do what you do or did do, regardless of what they say.
Yeah,
it's easy to say you're not going to do that until you're put in that position.
And then once you're there too, and when he's like, oh, he got a body up, they're going to rat on him. They're going to rat on him. And it happens all the time. I'd say maybe fucking 1 in fucking 40 people that catch bodies, like they're actually solid, but they're only solid because like they were either brothers or they were childhood friends, or they came from that cloth of like the early 70s, 80s, where it was like, you don't fucking open your mouth. Did
you ever run into your co-defendants at all in prison? Or did they keep you guys separate?
They kept us separate, whatever. There's no, I mean, even now, he's not going to be coming after me or anything like that. We kind of just went our separate ways. He turned himself around too, and I got some kites from him saying, it is what it is. If people be in the same position, there's no telling what anybody would do until you're in that position.
But even for cooperating against them, you guys all got similar amounts of time.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like someone got 50 years and you're out. Everyone's out by now, right?
Yeah. I'm actually. That's one of those things where I'm actually kind of glad. Like, I'm sad for the kid, but I'm glad none of us threw our lives away either, or got their lives thrown away.
I mean, basically, in your scenario, I look at it as you're the one that just took responsibility for everyone. You all got pretty much equal sentences.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's not like someone snitched and got away with it and the other person was there
doing a life sentence or something like that. And like I said, if I had any intention of going back to that way of life, then I'd feel like more of a piece of shit. Like, if I went back to try to get back into running the streets, trying to sell drugs again, trying to get whatever, then you already did the worst thing. Right? Like, the worst possible outcome of doing crime, and you failed at it. So you can't do this anymore, because it could always lead to that.
What was the emotional toll all those years of knowing that someone died because of your actions?
Oh, it was tough, man. But again, having the forgiveness from the victim's mother was just the first step. But I had to forgive myself too, and doing a lot of self-reflection. I mean, did over a year in segregation just from getting into trouble. I got into writing. I got into drawing. I read anything I could get my hands on. And again, part of those programs I got into was actually it was like a prison book club that was, and it sounds kind of gay, but it was probably one of the best things I ever got involved in. It's two guys, like volunteers. There's no good time, but they come in and they bring in either classic literature or something up to date. No recreational reads. It's more like real life stuff. And then you have like an assignment of read so many chapters, and then the next week you come and discuss it. So I've always, at that point, I read so many books, but I never talked about them. Like I never vocalized what I was getting out of it or what I was retaining, talking about characters and stuff like that. And then having other people talk about them to share their point of view of how they interpreted this certain story, it was eye-opening. Just because like it made me realize that like it's not just me in this world. It's not my perspective. There's so many other perspectives that are viewed when an occurrence happens.
How much time did you end up serving?
I was just under 12 years. It was 11 years and 8 months and so many days.
And was that standard to get paroled out that early on that sentence?
Well, I earned some good time and stuff too. If I started sooner, I could have got out probably around a little after 11 years. But yeah, I ended up doing about that time. But like I said, it's tough. Going to maximum security, it's like a vortex. You're going to get into trouble, even if you're not involved with shit. You're going to get into a conflict with a cop. You're going to get caught with a stinger. You're going to do whatever.
What year did you get out of prison?
It was 2015.
And you went in at
2004.
2004. So a lot changed between 2004 and 2015.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And I went to a pre-release first. It wasn't actually pre-release. I wasn't part of the pre-release program. It was a TTP program. It was a thing the governor started called the Transitional Treatment Programs for parolees. So you had to be on parole to do it. So that was in Pondville in Norfolk, Mass. So I had to do 90 days there before they actually let me out on parole. But it was great. I just work out. I'd walk the yard, listen to my headphones, whatever. Again, didn't really talk to anybody. I was really focused on just reintegrating and finding a job and whatever. When I finally got a day pass, when I filled out applications, I still had some time with my family. I was doing yard work at my grandmother's house. I was cleaning up the yard. I fucking cleaned the back of her fridge. I was cooking for her because I was part of the culinary program. It was rewarding. It was very rewarding to actually, having that support for so many years and then being able to kind of just give back in some kind of way.
Do you think that you were prepared enough for release by the criminal justice system?
Yeah, absolutely was.
Like you weren't thrown out there to the wolves?
No. And I had help. I had family help. If you don't have family support, then it takes a lot. You have to really have your nose to the grindstone. I obviously had a place to stay. I had transportation to go look for jobs and stuff like that. So it's just those two things are integral in getting back into society. And there's I know so many guys that just don't have that, and they got to take public transportation. They got to having that jacket on your back of being an ex-convict too is tough to carry. I found just being transparent about it always helped. And if it didn't work out, then I just move forward.
What was the hardest adjustment?
Oh my God. So I'll never forget. I was going. It's the first time I went to a mall. So this is before kind of Amazon crushed all the fucking malls. So my sister was like, I had money saved up over time. It was like a little over $1,000. So I was like, I don't want to go get some clothes. And then, so we go to the mall and we go, I grab, some sneakers and stuff like that. And then we're going to grab some clothes in another store. But I had the bag of sneakers in my hand. I was going to we're walking into the clothing store. I was like, I stopped. And she was like, what are you doing? I was like, can I even take this bag in there? And she was like, yeah, it's a fucking mall. I was like, well, I didn't know. It's so many years, like, especially in medium security, if you get a laundry bag and you leave your block and you go to the next block, you gotta fucking skirt the cops. So it was like, I didn't know I could do that. Same thing with going to the grocery store. Like, I got the corn in a husk, whatever, and the barrel's right next door. And she's like, help me out. I was like, oh, I can just shuck it right here. She's like, yeah. I was like, I think I'm going to steal it or something like that. You know what I mean? It was stuff like that. And obviously just the day-to-day, like I can walk out the front door, sleeping in my own bed. I can call whoever I want. You know what I mean? And everyone was texting then. And now people are fucking FaceTiming. And I was like, you see the teenage kids, they don't even talk. They're just FaceTiming. They're not even looking at each other. They just have the FaceTime just sitting there talking. It was just wild.
Yeah. Even the 3 years that I did, obviously no comparison, but it was so much had changed in those 3 years. It
Yeah.
was just different, coming out. Life feels weird, so I can't imagine doing 12 years
Yeah.
or more.
Yeah. When the first time my mother picked me up, because it was usually my sister for my day passes. The first time my mother picked me up, she went into a gas station, and I found this just black box in the center console. I'm looking at it. I'm like trying to open it, and I'm like, trying to open. I'm trying to figure this fucking thing out. I'm looking for a button or a switch or something to flip the screen because I'm thinking it's a phone. And my mother's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "How do I open the screen on this phone?" She was like, "That's one of my pack chargers for the phone. That's just a charger. It's not even a phone." I was like, "Oh shit!" I was like, "I don't fucking know."
That's funny. Did your community openly receive you when you came back, or didn't? By that point, so much time had passed, it didn't even matter?
So much time went by. But I'll never forget. Like, my sister got a lot of the brunt of, of my stuff. She was just getting into middle school, so it was obviously big news. And people were always. She was always like, "Oh, it's her brother. Her brother got charged. Her brother got charged with killing a guy. Like he killed somebody." So she kind of had to deal with that. By the time I got out, the smoke kind of cleared.
How many people do you think didn't even understand the full story and just went off of the papers? Like, did they not know that you weren't the one that pulled the trigger? You weren't even there when that went off?
Didn't matter. It didn't matter. It's more so in county than any other place. In county, it's like you fucking ratted. That's it. Get off the fucking block. And I was never gonna leave. I was always fighting. So I even came to the point where my grandmother came to come visit me, and I was like, I had to refuse a visit because I looked like the Elephant Man. Yeah, and that was one particular one. With there was a Puerto Rican kid. He obviously knew my co-defendant. We ended up fighting on the tier, and then he got charged with hitting a cop because he went to go hit me, and I ducked, and he blasted the cop. But at that point, that was just the fight they were caught for. I was fighting two kids in the cell like 3 days before that, so I was already busted up. And then they finally throw me in seg, and my cellmate they're holding his mail, and it was a guy I knew, his uncle, and he's fucking flipping out. They're holding his mail because he thought he was trying to get drugs in the mail. So he's banging on the door. Next thing you know, he's fighting the move team, and then they look at me like, "You gonna cuff up and go out?" I was like, "Nope, I'm with him." Because you can't, you know what I mean? You can't do it. You can't fucking be a bitch. And then, so the move team comes in. They fucking spray the whole place with that orange foam fucking spray. And that shit got into my wounds, and it just blew my face up. And then, and they threw you in the chair at the time. They had the chair, they restrain you, your hands behind your back, and you're just in this chair. I can't see a fucking thing. They bring me to, to medical. And then, and they all hear like, "Oh, he fought the cops," so whatever. And like, the nurses are for them, right? So there's like one nurse that has this tag on, and she's training. She looks at me and she was like, "You all right? You gonna kill yourself?" "No." "Okay," and just leaves. And my head's like out here. And like, even the girl that was like, she was training, she looked at me like, "Oh my God." She was like, "What the fuck?" And luckily the next shift that came on, the next nurse, was like an hour later, the next nurse cleaned me up, and they gave me a wet towel and fucking cleaned my face up, and then, put hydrogen peroxide on my wound and stuff like that. But yeah, so my grandmother came that weekend, and I was like, I can't take this visit.
Was it hard to find work when you got out?
So I was a big fitness guy. I worked out, most of my incarceration. When I was in Shirley Max, they didn't have any free weights there. It was all universal weights, and I got all these, muscle and fitness magazines, and I got all these routines, and I was doing all these calisthenics and stuff. And then when I got to medium, I was like, the best thing I could do was, I was like, they got a weight room there. I could just go lift weights or whatever. And so, I did that for so many years. I was part of what I wanted to do when I got out was be some kind of coach, work at a gym or whatever. So I did that, but you don't make that much money being a coach unless you're like the head coach. And even then, you're not making that much unless the gym's doing really good. So I was fortunate enough to find a CrossFit gym when I first got out, explained to him my situation. I was obviously in really good shape at the time, but I didn't have any experience really coaching. I had to learn. I was willing to learn, to do like some kind of internship for a month or two or whatever. I was lucky enough for them to take me on it, which I did, but I worked a second job. I was going in and out of Boston, working at a Vietnamese restaurant. I was working at a line cook in another place. So I had like 3 jobs when I first got out.
When did you meet your wife?
So I part of coaching, I got into training MMA too. That that helped me a great deal. So I had this, I'll give them a shout out, defensive edge in Wakefield. I had a friend that I actually did time with, Will, who was out and became a pro MMA fighter, and he was training out of that gym. By the time I got involved, he ended up going down to New Mexico and training at Jackson Winklejohn. That's where John Jones trains and all those guys. So I went there. I explained to him, my history, and I just wanted to get into training and stuff like that. And the guy, Rick, that owned the gym, explained to me, he goes, hey, one of my head coaches is actually a corrections officer, so I just want to make sure there's not going to be. And I was like, I actually knew who he was, and he wasn't a bad CO, and I didn't have any chip on my shoulder or anything like that anyway. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. So I started training there as I'm coaching either in the morning or at night. I started going to the local promotions. The guys I was training with, if they had a fight, I go buy tickets to kind of support them and go to the shows. So I went to one of the MMA shows. It was actually Combat Zone in New Hampshire, named Combat Zone after the famous place in Boston. Combat Zone was just Chinatown. There was a lot of nefarious stuff happening in the 80s and 70s. So it was in Manchester, New Hampshire. I went to one of the shows. She was a photographer, and like I said, at this point, we had knew a lot of the same people. So I was messaging her on Facebook and stuff like that, and then I got to fortunately meet her, and I met her that night, and I gave her my number, and I offered to carry a camera bag. She was like, "Fucking don't touch my camera bag. I don't want anybody grabbing this thing." So I was like, "Okay," We hit it off, started talking. I explained to her my history. She was just more intrigued than anything. She's older, but she'd been doing that for about, at the time, like 10 years. She was one of the premier photographers in all the MMA promotions up and down the East Coast. We never looked back. By 4 or 5 months later, I was already moving in, and then we got married. I think even maybe a little over a year after that.
Do you think it's better to just be upfront with people about your past relationships, future bosses, anything in that category?
Absolutely, yeah. Especially when it comes to work. You leave it on them, all right? You just kind of be forthcoming. You don't want that coming back to bite you in the ass and having to explain yourself later on. Relationships and job stuff. I actually went back into when I first started dating my wife again. When I moved out there, I couldn't work at the old job, so I had to find another one. I knew I had the drain cleaning and plumbing experience and behind me, so started plumbing again because I knew you make the most money. I went to school for plumbing, accrued my hours, and then and that was it. And I knew I just had to do that. But when you go to apply for your plumber's license, you can't have any felonies on your record, so you can't be like a master plumber. You could be a journeyman, but you can't be a master plumber with a felony on your record. Is
life what you expected it to be when you were sitting in prison all those years thinking about getting out?
No. I'm kind of I can be kind of cynical too. Like I always think something's gonna go wrong. Like something's gonna happen. I was, like someone's gonna come from my past and whatever, and it never did. So I'm fortunate in that aspect. But yeah, leading up to it, I was like, oh, something's gonna happen. Something. There's no way I'm ever gonna escape. I'm gonna end up back at this place. I still have dreams being back in prison. But once I got out and I got acclimated, they became, the cynicism, the chatter like left. You know what I mean? Like once I started doing the right things and training a lot, that helps a great deal too. Again, it eliminates that inner chatter in your head, that the bad shoulder. You know what I mean? With somebody whispering the cynical things in your ear, or just your own inner voice telling you like, you can't do this, or you're not, things aren't, you're not going to be successful. Things are going to be really hard and whatever. Just that all kind of just goes away.
How do you find peace and happiness?
Obviously, the day-to-day stuff. I've got so many things to do. It's hard to be stagnant, And like I said, I still train. Where I have my business now, the MMA gym's right across the street. And the day-to-day operations for getting a business going, they keep you busy. We have the dog. If you don't have a dog, then I definitely suggest you get one, because you could be having the worst day and they come, they're just wagging their tail. They just want you to pet them. They want you to take them for a walk or whatever.
They'll love you no matter what.
Yeah, exactly. Having that, and especially when you rescue them too. Because I had dogs my whole life, but I never rescued one. Rescue one's a game changer. And then it's just, I guess for me, people say like, oh, I want to start a business to get rich. Well, I was like, well, it's not going to happen right away. You got to be prepared to like give it your all. When you start a business, it's your kid, pretty much. You make it your kid. You got to put, if you don't put your all into it, you're not going to get it all back.
Do you feel like your prison sentence was just?
I do, yeah. Looking back on it, even when I first got arrested, I was like, 10 years kind of seems right. Like I feel like 10 years would be kind of just for this. But there's that joint venture theory in Massachusetts that says, if there's a murder involved, then everyone's just as guilty. So, but I felt like 12, well, under 12 years is definitely just for what I participated in.
Do you find there's days where you blame yourself for what happened?
Of course, yeah. I always have days like that where you kind of like, especially the guilt of getting my cousin involved, the kid passing away, just my poor decisions. Not even just that, everything I did. You know what I mean? I really reflected on, when I was selling drugs, I'd seen kids, I'd sell drugs too that weren't like in the full thralls of things. They're just kind of trying it out. Then I'd be in prison and that kid walks in the fucking door and I see he's fucking strung out. The guys I grew up with that were like everyday people we played basketball with, or touch football, or whatever. And I'd be in county jail and they come in, they're strung out and they fucking got scars on their necks and stuff like that. I was like, holy shit. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, why didn't we try to prevent this from happening? Like, but when you're in the thick of things, you're not ever going to think it's going to get that bad.
Do you feel like you're the same person that committed that crime?
No, absolutely not. Again, I was a 19-year-old kid. And I considered myself a man. I was working. I had my own apartment and whatever. I started when I was in Shirley Medium. I did the it was a Project Youth program with kids from. It wasn't like Scared Straight, but kids come from different high schools from all over the state, and we just tell our story and then take questions after. And they were high school kids, mostly seniors. And then I'd ask at the end, like, how old are you? Whatever. They'd be, 18, 17, whatever. And I'd say, fuck, like, I was just a fucking kid, like, because they were kids, you know what I mean? Like, but that's the thing, you're not mature yet. And obviously now it's fortunate enough that this new law is saying that they can convict somebody of first-degree murder if they were under the age of 17 or 18 because their brain's just not fully developed yet. And that's 100% true.
Do you think that people should be held to their past decisions for the rest of their life when they make a mistake like that at 19 or as a kid?
No, definitely not, because you're not the same person after that. I mean, if you get worse, if you keep repeating it, if you keep doing the same thing and keep, just thinking that, like, you can just get away with things, you're still out there, terrorizing people, somebody, you're just committing crimes, and, I mean, then you could be held accountable, but I feel like people do change if they want to,
What do you think is the biggest life lesson you want people to take away from your story?
I'd say, forgiveness is a big thing. No matter who it is, if they wronged you in some kind of way, if you hold that against them the whole time, then it's pretty much like carrying luggage around. Like, you got this heavy fucking weight you're just carrying around because you got this grudge against this person for whatever reason, and until you let it go, it's always going to be weighing you down.
Yeah, too many people have grudges.
Yeah.
My dad likes to hold grudges. I tell him all the time, it's not worth the energy.
It's not. Even interfamily stuff, too. I've had, aunts that don't talk to each other because they brought fucking sweet potatoes instead of mashed potatoes or whatever. It's like...
Life's too short.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to enjoy the people you care about and you love and be with them.
Yeah, and just don't be an asshole. Just don't be an asshole. Be a good person. You got to have a purpose. You got to have some kind of purpose in life, no matter what it is. And finding that when I first got out, I started volunteering at a literacy center. That was very rewarding. I went back into prison as a volunteer. That was great. So having something extracurricular outside of your daily life to give you that extra sense of purpose, of giving back of somehow.
I love that. Well, John, thanks so much for coming on the show today, man.
Yeah,
I appreciate you driving out here, and I got to come to Rhode Island soon and check out what you guys got going on.
Yeah, definitely, man. You're always welcome.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to trying this.
All right, cool, man. Thanks again for having me.
Yeah, of course, man, and safe travels back.
Yeah, I will.